Yeah, I want
Precisely.
to encourage people to listen to your podcast, The Humble Skeptic. I've listened to a few episodes, really interesting stuff because you get into a lot of historical stuff. And one of those things we're going to talk about today because you reached out to me and you were talking about one of the eyewitnesses of the resurrection of Jesus. Of course, we know that those first eyewitnesses were women. That's one of the apologetic points we talk about. But you pointed out that there's one named Joanna. And I have to be honest with you, Shane, I was like, wait, excuse me, what? I didn't like off the top of my head know that. So I went to Luke 24, verse 10, and it says it right there. Now it was Mary Magdalene and Joanna and Mary, the mother of James, and the other women with them who told these things to the apostles. So Joanna is actually mentioned by name. So what is the significance of Joanna?
Yeah, I argue in a forthcoming book that she's actually Luke's key witness. And the reason that let me sort of first introduce who she is. I had the same experience as you just 10 years ago or so. I was reading a book by I think it was Ben Witherington, and he had a whole chapter on Joanna. And I was preparing an interview with this theologian, and I was thinking, I I've been to seminary. I don't know who she is. So
Right, right.
the the first place she's mentioned in Luke's gospel. First of all, she's only mentioned in Luke's gospel. Okay. And the first place she's mentioned is Luke 8:3. And in Luke 8:3, she's described as one of the women who was a follower of Jesus who supported him out of her means. And in particular, it says she was the wife of Cusa, Herod's household manager.
Oh.
Okay.
How did
Now
this I
that's
mean, I don't know how I didn't like that didn't jump out at me before. Herod's household manager. My goodness.
Yeah, and I actually argue in my piece that that's actually not the best translation, because when I did
Okay.
some research on the Greek word, what I found was what's there is epitropos. That's the word that Josephus uses of Daniel in the time of Nebuchadnezzar. He was the right hand man of Nebuchadnezzar. He was, the second in charge. Then also it's the word that Philo uses of Joseph under Pharaoh, who was second in command. It's the same word that's used of Pilate and of other procurators. In other words, the word just means governor, and there are better words to use for like a household steward. So basically, Cusa would be the governor, the prime minister. He's a person of nobility.
Wow.
And so Joanna and Cusa would then be people in Herod's court. And James Edwards, one of the commentators on Luke, says, when the gospel has arrived, according to Luke, when the gospel, shows up, and you see people like Joanna believing this, becoming a disciple, it's reached the highest echelons of society.
That's amazing. And then in Luke 24, she's an eyewitness, a key eyewitness to the resurrection of Jesus. And I know that Luke 24:10, where she's mentioned, this has a chiastic structure. Or is it chiastic or chiastic? I never know how it's
I
pronounced.
hear it both ways. I
Both.
say chiastic.
Okay, we'll go with chiastic. But just for anybody who's unfamiliar, what is a chiasm? What does that even mean? And then we can discuss how that fits in with this passage.
Yeah. So basically, a chiasm was a way, a structural way for ancient people to highlight something, to emphasize something. So in the story of the flood of Noah, you have all these elements that centers on this one line, and God remembered Noah. And then it sort of backs out of the narrative with these repeating themes. And you can see by the structure that that section is being highlighted. They didn't have highlighters. They didn't have bold font. So this is the way they would emphasize things. And a lot of scholars have pointed out that here in this section of Luke's, the very earliest part of the resurrection narrative in Luke 24, there's a curious chiastic structure with Joanna at the center. And scholars haven't know what to do with it, because she's such a seemingly minor character. And what you have is the women remembered Jesus' words after the angels tell them. They all told these things to the 11. It was Mary Magdalene. She's a disciple that all of us remember, because she's in all four gospels, and Joanna, and then another Mary is mentioned, and then they tell these things to the apostles. So there's just the structure. So Richard Bauckham and a few other scholars highlight this chiasm. They just don't know what to do with it,
Wow.
because again, Joanna isn't terribly significant.